The stagecoach rattled into Hawthorne, Nevada on a scorching afternoon in July of 1878, carrying a woman who had learned long ago that trust was a luxury she could not afford. Lily Dawson pressed her face against the dusty window, watching the rough mining town materialize through waves of desert heat, her fingers clutching a worn carpetbag that contained everything she owned in this world. She was 23 years old and had been running for so long that she no longer remembered what it felt like to stand still. The stage lurched to a halt outside the Wells Fargo office, and Lily stepped down onto the packed Earth Street, her dark brown hair already dampening with sweat beneath her bonnet. She had come to Hawthorne because it was far enough from Sacramento, far enough from the memories that still woke her screaming in the night, far enough from the man who had taught her that love was just another word for ownership. "Miss Dawson." A voice cut through her thoughts, and Lily spun around, her hand instinctively going to the small knife she kept hidden in her skirts. A portly man in a dusty suit approached, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "I am Bernard Hayes, the bank manager. I received word you would be arriving today to take up the position as schoolteacher." Lily forced herself to relax, to unclench the fist hidden in her skirts. "Yes, sir. Thank you for meeting me. The schoolhouse is modest, but it has living quarters attached. I will show you there directly." Hayes gestured toward a wagon, but Lily noticed his eyes kept darting nervously toward the mountains that loomed in the distance, their peaks still capped with snow despite the summer heat. She followed his gaze and saw a figure there, silhouetted against the bright sky. Even from this distance, she could make out the broad shoulders, the long hair tied back, the rifle slung across his back. The man sat astride a massive horse, perfectly still, watching the town below. "Who is that?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Hayes shifted uncomfortably. "That would be Asher Quinn. He is a trapper, lives up in those mountains most of the year, comes down for supplies every few weeks, keeps to himself mostly." The banker's tone suggested there was more to the story, but Lily did not press. She had her own secrets to keep. The schoolhouse was indeed modest. A simple wooden structure at the edge of town with 4 walls, a pot-bellied stove, and a small room in the back where a narrow bed and washstand waited. Lily set down her bag and looked around at what would be her new life. It was not much, but it was hers, and no one could take it from her. That first night, she lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the desert, the distant howl of coyotes, the whisper of wind through sagebrush. She thought about the man on the mountain, wondered why his image had stayed with her, then pushed the thought away. She had not come here for that. She had come here to disappear. The next morning, Lily rose before dawn and began preparing the schoolhouse for her students. She swept the floors, washed the windows, arranged the few books and slates that the town had provided. By the time the sun was fully up, she had transformed the dusty room into something that almost looked like a place of learning. The children arrived in clusters, some eager, some reluctant, all curious about the new teacher who had come from California. There were 12 of them in total, ranging from 6 to 14 years old, the sons and daughters of miners and merchants, ranchers and tradesmen. Lily stood before them and felt something in her chest loosen just slightly. These children needed her. That was something she could understand. She had been teaching for 3 days when she saw him again. Asher Quinn rode into town on a Thursday morning, his horse laden with pelts and furs. Lily was outside with her students during their afternoon break, supervising as they played a spirited game of tag in the dusty yard. She felt his presence before she saw him, a prickling awareness that made her turn toward the main street. He was even more imposing up close. Asher Quinn stood well over 6 feet tall, his body built with the kind of muscle that came from years of hard living in unforgiving terrain. His hair, a deep brown shot through with gold from the sun, hung past his shoulders, and a thick beard covered the lower half of his face. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, pale blue and startlingly gentle in such a rugged face. He was looking directly at her. Lily felt heat rise in her cheeks and quickly turned back to her students, but she could still feel his gaze on her back. She heard his horse moving down the street, stopping at the general store, and she forced herself to focus on the children, on calling them back inside for their afternoon lessons. But that night, as she prepared her supper over the small stove in her quarters, she found herself thinking about those blue eyes, about the way he had looked at her with something that might have been curiosity, or might have been something more. The next morning, there was a deer haunch hanging from a hook outside her door. Lily stared at it, her heart hammering in her chest. There was no note, no indication of who had left it, but she knew. She stood there for a long moment, torn between gratitude for the meat, which would feed her for a week, and a deep wariness that made her want to throw it in the dirt. She compromised by taking it inside but resolving to pay whoever had left it. She would not be in anyone's debt. That afternoon, after her students had gone home, Lily walked to the general store. The proprietor, a weathered woman named Martha Griffith, looked up from her ledger as Lily entered. "I need to know where I can find Asher Quinn," Lily said without preamble. Martha raised an eyebrow. "What business would you have with the mountain man, dear? He left meat at my door. I want to pay him for it." A knowing smile crossed Martha's face. "Asher does not take payment for his gifts, Miss Dawson. He has been leaving game for the widows and those in need for years. It is just his way." "I am not a widow and I am not in need," Lily said, her voice sharper than she intended. "I have a salary. I can buy my own food." Martha's expression softened. "Of course you can, dear, but rejecting kindness is a lonely way to live. Asher means no harm by it." Lily left the store with supplies she did not need, her emotions churning. She understood kindness, but she also understood that gifts came with expectations, with strings that could tighten into nooses. She had learned that lesson well, but the meat kept coming. Every few days, there would be something outside her door. Rabbit, quail, once a haunch of elk that was far too much for one person. Lily began giving the excess to families in town who truly were struggling, but she could not bring herself to throw the gifts away entirely. She did not see Asher again for 2 weeks. Then, on a Saturday morning when she had taken her students on a nature walk to study the desert plants, they encountered him on the trail. He was kneeling beside a stream, filling water skins, and he rose smoothly to his feet as they approached. Up close, Lily could see the scars that marked his hands and forearms, the weathered quality of his skin that spoke of years spent exposed to the elements. His buckskin shirt stretched across a chest so broad it made her breath catch. "Mr. Quinn," she said, keeping her voice level and professional, "we did not mean to disturb you." "No disturbance, madam." His voice was deep and rough, like gravel rolling in a river. "Just watering my horse." The children clustered around her, staring at the mountain man with wide eyes. Little Sarah Mitchell, always the bravest, piped up. "Are you a real mountain man, mister?" A hint of a smile touched Asher's eyes, though his expression remained serious. "I suppose I am, little miss." "You fight bears." This from Tommy Hayes, the banker's son. "Only when they fight me first." The children erupted with questions, and Lily watched in surprise as Asher patiently answered each one, his massive frame crouching down so he could look them in the eyes as he spoke. He showed them how to read animal tracks in the soft earth, pointed out a hawk's nest in a distant tree, explained how the native tribes used different plants for medicine and food. Lily found herself drawn into the impromptu lesson, fascinated despite herself. There was a gentleness to this huge man that contradicted everything his appearance suggested, a patience with the children that spoke of unexpected depths. When it was time to return to town, Asher tipped his head to her. "Miss Dawson, children." "Wait," Lily heard herself say. He turned back, those blue eyes steady on her face. "The meat, you have been leaving it." "Yes, madam. I can buy my own food, Mr. Quinn." "I know that, madam, but the mountain provides more than I can use myself. Seemed ashamed to let it go to waste. I cannot pay you." "Did not ask you to." They stood there in the hot sun, the children watching with rapt attention, and Lily felt something shift inside her, a tiny crack in the walls she had built so carefully. "Thank you," she said finally, the words feeling strange in her mouth. Asher's expression did not change, but something in his eyes warmed. "You are welcome, Miss Dawson." Then he swung up onto his horse and rode away, and Lily led her students back to town, her thoughts in turmoil. That night, she dreamed of blue eyes and gentle hands, and woke with tears on her cheeks, mourning for a version of herself who might have been able to accept such gifts without fear. The summer rolled on, and Lily settled into the rhythms of her new life. She grew to love her students, to take pride in their progress. The town accepted her, and she made tentative friendships with some of the women, though she always kept a careful distance. And Asher Quinn continued to leave gifts, not just meat now, but other things. A bouquet of wildflowers left on her step, a pair of soft rabbit fur mittens as the nights began to cool. A beautifully carved wooden bookmark slipped between the pages of her Bible. Lily told herself she should refuse these things, should confront him and make it clear that she wanted nothing from him. But she could not bring herself to do it. The gifts felt different from anything she had experienced before. There was no demand in them, no expectation. They simply appeared, quiet offerings that asked for nothing in return. She saw him occasionally when he came to town for supplies, and each time they spoke a little longer. Brief conversations about the weather, about her students, about the mountains he called home. Asher never pressed her for more, never tried to extend their encounters beyond what she seemed willing to give. He simply waited, patient as the mountains themselves. It was September when everything changed. Lily was walking back to the schoolhouse after having supper with Martha Griffith when she heard footsteps behind her. The sun had set, and the street was empty, most families already settling in for the night. She quickened her pace, her hand going to the knife in her pocket. "Lily Dawson." The voice made her blood run cold. She spun around and saw him standing there in the shadows, exactly as she had feared he would eventually appear. Frank Morrison had found her. He looked the same as he had in Sacramento, tall and handsome in the way that had once made her heart race, before she learned what that charm concealed. His dark eyes glittered in the lamplight, and his smile was the same one that had fooled her into thinking he loved her. "Did you really think you could run from me?" Frank stepped closer and Lily backed away, her fingers tight around the knife handle. "We had an agreement, Lily. You promised yourself to me." "I promised nothing," Lily said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "You lied to me. You hurt me. I owe you nothing. I gave you everything, dresses, jewelry, a fine place to live, and you repaid me by running away like a thief in the night." Frank's voice took on the edge she remembered so well, the tone that always preceded violence. "You are mine, Lily. You always will be. I am nobody's." She pulled the knife from her pocket, holding it between them. "Leave me alone, Frank. Go back to California and forget you ever knew me," he laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the empty street. "Put that away before you hurt yourself. You are coming back with me, whether you want to or not. I have spent too much time and money tracking you down to leave empty-handed." Frank lunged forward, faster than she expected, and Lily slashed out with the knife. She felt it connect, heard his curse of pain, but then his hand closed around her wrist with brutal force. The knife clattered to the ground. "You little wildcat," Frank hissed, blood dripping from a cut on his arm. "You are going to regret that." Then he was gone, ripped away from her with such force that Lily stumbled backward. She looked up and saw Asher Quinn holding Frank by the throat, lifting him clean off the ground with one massive arm. The lady said no. Asher's voice was calm, almost conversational, but there was something in it that made Lily's skin prickle. "I suggest you listen." Frank clawed at Asher's hand, gasping for air. "This is none of your business, you savage. She is mine. She is her own." Asher set Frank down but did not release him. "And she wants you gone." Lily found her voice. "Leave Frank now. Before I go to the sheriff and tell him how you've been living off stolen money in Sacramento, how you have warrants out in 2 states. Frank's eyes widened, and Lily saw the calculation there, the weighing of options. Finally, he jerked free of Asher's grip and stepped back, straightening his coat with shaking hands. "This is not over," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It is." Asher moved to stand beside Lily, and even without touching her, his presence felt like a wall between her and Frank. "You have until sunrise to be gone from this town. If I see you here after that, I will finish what we started here." Frank looked between them, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. Then he spat in the dirt at their feet and stalked away into the darkness. Lily stood frozen, her whole body trembling with adrenaline and shock. She felt Asher's hand, gentle on her shoulder, and flinched before she could stop herself. He withdrew immediately. "Did he hurt you?" "No, I." Her voice broke, and to her horror she felt tears streaming down her face. "How did you know?" "I saw him following you from the store. Something about the way he moved made me think you were in danger." Asher bent down and retrieved her knife, holding it out handle first. "Are you all right, Miss Dawson?" Lily took the knife with shaking hands, then looked up at the man who had just saved her from a nightmare she thought she had escaped. In the lamplight, his face was all sharp planes and shadows, but his eyes were kind, concerned, patient. "No," she whispered, "but I will be." "Thank you, Mr. Quinn." "Asher," he said quietly. "My name is Asher, Asher." The name felt right on her tongue. "I am Lily." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his stern features. "I know." They stood there in the empty street, and for the first time since arriving in Hawthorne, Lily felt something other than fear. She felt the possibility of safety, of someone who might actually mean it when they offered protection. "He will not come back," Asher said, and it was not a question but a statement of fact. "I will make sure of it. You cannot watch over me forever." "No," Asher agreed, "but I can watch over you until you feel safe again, if you will let me." Lily looked at this mountain man with gentle eyes and patient hands, and felt the walls inside her chest crack just a little wider. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Asher was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was honest and unguarded. "Because from the moment I saw you step off that stage, I knew you were someone worth waiting for. And I am a patient man, Lily Dawson." Her breath caught. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Frank had wanted to possess her, to own her like a beautiful object. But Asher spoke of waiting, of patience, of giving her the time she needed. "I do not know if I can ever trust anyone again," she said, the words raw and painful. "That is all right, I will wait. I might never be ready. Then I will still wait." Lily felt something break open inside her, something she had thought was dead and buried. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. "Walk me home," she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Asher offered his arm, careful not to touch her until she reached out and took it. Together they walked through the quiet streets of Hawthorne, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Lily felt the tiniest spark of hope. True to his word, Frank Morrison was gone by sunrise. Lily heard from Martha that a man matching his description had left on the early stage, nursing a broken nose and two black eyes that he had not had when he confronted Lily. She did not ask Asher about it when he appeared at the schoolhouse later that day, a haunch of venison over his shoulder. "For your pantry," he said simply. "Thank you." Lily took the meat, then hesitated. "Would you like to stay for coffee? I just made a fresh pot." The surprise and pleasure in Asher's eyes made her glad she had asked. "I would like that very much." They sat at the small table in her quarters, drinking coffee and talking. Asher told her about his life in the mountains, about the cabin he had built with his own hands, about the rhythms of the seasons and the animals he shared the wilderness with. Lily found herself relaxing as she listened, captivated by the way he spoke about the natural world with such reverence and understanding. "You love it up there," she observed. "I do. It is honest. Harsh, but honest. The mountain does not pretend to be anything it is not." He paused, his calloused fingers wrapped around the delicate coffee cup. "I came out here 10 years ago after the war. Could not stomach the cities anymore, the noise and the crowds. Needed space to breathe." "The war," Lily said quietly. "You fought for 3 years, long enough." The shadows in his eyes told her there were stories there he was not ready to share, and she understood that completely. "I came here to escape too," she found herself saying. "From Sacramento, from Frank, from a life that was killing me slowly." Asher waited, patient as always, and somehow that patience made it easier to continue. "I met Frank 2 years ago. I was working as a seamstress, barely making enough to eat. He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. He promised me security, comfort, love." Lily wrapped her hands around her own cup, needing the warmth. "It took me 6 months to realize that what he called love was just control. He wanted to own me, to make all my decisions, to keep me locked away like a doll in a music box. He hurt you. It was not a question." "Yes." "Not often, but enough. And the threat of it was always there, hanging over everything." Lily met Asher's eyes, saw the anger there, but also the compassion. "I saved every penny I could hide from him. When I saw the advertisement for a teacher in Nevada, I took it as a sign. I left everything behind and ran. You were brave. I was terrified. Bravery is not the absence of fear, Lily. It is acting despite it." Asher reached across the table, then stopped, his hand hovering. "May I?" The fact that he asked, that he gave her the choice, made Lily's eyes sting with tears. She placed her hand in his, felt his rough palm engulf her smaller fingers with surprising gentleness. "You are safe now," Asher said. "I give you my word." And somehow, impossibly, Lily believed him. After that day, Asher began spending more time in town. He would appear at the schoolhouse in the afternoons, helping with repairs or splitting wood for the stove. The children adored him, and he seemed to have endless patience for their questions and demands for stories. Lily watched him with her students and saw a side of him that made her heart ache with longing. He was gentle with the smallest children, encouraging with the older ones who struggled with their lessons. He never raised his voice, never showed frustration. He simply gave them the same patient attention he gave everything else. "You would make a good father," she said one afternoon after the children had gone home, and they were sitting on the steps of the schoolhouse, watching the sun set over the mountains. Asher looked at her, surprise clear in his expression. "Never thought much about it. Would have to find a wife first. I imagine there are plenty of women who would be interested." Lily tried to keep her tone light, but something in her chest tightened at the thought. "Only interested in one," Asher said quietly. Their eyes met, and Lily felt her breath catch. She knew what he was saying, what he was offering. The question was whether she was brave enough to reach for it. "Asher," she started, but he shook his head. "No need to say anything, Lily." "I meant what I said. I will wait." October brought cooler weather and the first dusting of snow on the mountain peaks. Asher began preparing for winter, making longer trips into the high country to set his trap lines and stock his cabin with supplies. Each time he left, Lily felt a hollow ache in her chest that grew stronger with each passing week. She missed him. It was a startling realization, and a terrifying one. Missing someone meant caring about them, and caring meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant the possibility of pain. But it also meant the possibility of something more. Lily found herself watching the mountain trail, waiting for the sight of Asher's big horse coming down the slope. When he appeared, usually laden with furs and game, her heart would lift in a way that both thrilled and frightened her. They fell into a pattern. Asher would arrive in town, sell his furs, and then come directly to the schoolhouse. They would have coffee and talk, sometimes for hours, sharing stories and silences with equal comfort. He never pushed for more than she was willing to give, never tried to rush her or make demands. He simply waited. In early November, the first real snow came. It blew in on a howling wind that rattled the windows of the schoolhouse and piled drifts against the door. Lily dismissed her students early, worried about them making it home safely, and was battening down for the storm when Asher appeared. "Come to check on you," he said, snow already collecting in his hair and beard. "This is going to be a big one. You have enough wood and food?" "I think so." Lily looked at the small stack of wood by the stove and felt doubt creep in. "Maybe not enough wood. I will get more." Asher disappeared before she could protest, and returned 3 times with massive armloads of split logs, stacking them neatly along the wall until she had enough to last a week. By the time he finished, the wind was screaming and the snow was falling so thick that Lily could barely see across the street. "You cannot ride back up the mountain in this," she said, worry making her voice sharp. "I will be fine. I have ridden through worse." "Asher Quinn, do not be a fool. You will freeze to death before you make it halfway home." He looked at her in surprise, and Lily realized it was the first time she had truly argued with him about something, the first time she had let her concern show so plainly. "I do not want to impose," Asher said carefully. "You are not imposing. I am asking you to stay, please." The last word came out softer, almost pleading. Asher's expression softened. "All right, if you are sure. I am sure." They spent the evening in companionable silence, Lily correcting papers while Asher carved a small wooden horse for Tommy Hayes. The wind howled outside, but inside the little room was warm and safe. Lily made a simple supper of beans and cornbread, and they ate at her small table, their knees nearly touching in the confined space. "Tell me about your family," Lily said as they washed the dishes together. "Do you have anyone?" "Had a brother," Asher said quietly. "Lost him at Antietam. Parents died of fever the year after. Been on my own since then." "I am sorry." Lily dried a plate, her heart aching for the loneliness in his voice. "What about you? Any family back in California?" "My parents died when I was 15. Cholera. I have been on my own ever since, making my way however I could." Lily set down the dish and turned to face him. "Until I met Frank, I thought being alone was the safest way to live. And now I am not so sure." She met his eyes, saw the hope there, and felt her walls crumble just a little more. Being alone is safe, but it is also lonely. "Yes," Asher agreed. "It is." That night, Lily gave Asher her bed while she made up a pallet on the floor by the stove. He protested, of course, but she would not hear of it. The bed was narrow and short for his frame, but he settled onto it without complaint. Lily lay awake in the darkness, listening to his steady breathing, and felt something she had not felt in years: peace. There was a large, gentle man sleeping just a few feet away, and she was not afraid. Instead, she felt protected, cherished, safe. It was a revelation. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of being snowed in together, of learning each other's habits and quirks, of talking and laughing and simply being. Asher helped her prepare lessons for her students, his large hands surprisingly deft with the pen as he copied out writing exercises. Lily mended a tear in his shirt, her needle flying through the buckskin with practiced ease. On the 3rd evening, as the storm finally began to clear, Lily found herself sitting beside Asher on her narrow bed, their shoulders touching as they looked at a book of poetry she had brought from California. "Read that one again," Asher said, pointing to a Wordsworth poem about the beauty of nature. Lily read, her voice soft in the quiet room, and when she finished, she looked up to find Asher watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. "What?" she asked. "You are beautiful when you read. Your whole face lights up." Lily felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Asher, I know, I am sorry, should not have said that." He started to pull away, but Lily caught his hand. "No, do not apologize." She took a shaky breath. "I am just not used to compliments that feel real." "Everything I say to you is real, Lily. I do not know how to be anything else." She believed him. That was the terrifying, wonderful part. She actually believed him. "I am afraid," she whispered. "I know. I do not know how to do this, how to trust again." "You do not have to figure it all out tonight." Asher turned his hand so their fingers could lace together. "We can take it slow as you need." Lily looked at their joined hands, his so much larger than hers, roughened by years of hard work but infinitely gentle. Then she looked up at his face, at the patience and understanding in his blue eyes, and made a decision. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, soft and hesitant. Asher froze for just a moment, then kissed her back with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. It was nothing like kissing Frank, nothing like the demanding, possessive kisses that had left her feeling used and empty. This was gentle, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She did not pull away. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Asher rested his forehead against hers. "Lily," he said, her name a prayer on his lips. "I am still afraid," she admitted. "That is all right. I am not going anywhere." They held each other as the storm cleared and the stars came out, and Lily felt something she had thought was lost forever beginning to bloom in her chest. Hope, trust, the fragile beginnings of love. When Asher finally rode back up to his cabin 2 days later, Lily stood in the doorway of the schoolhouse and watched until he disappeared from view. Then she went inside and cried, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that she was falling in love, and this time it felt right. November passed into December, and the relationship between Lily and Asher deepened with each passing day. He came to town more frequently now, sometimes staying for several days at a time, sleeping in the storage room at the general store so as not to compromise Lily's reputation. They took long walks together when the weather permitted, their conversations ranging from the profound to the mundane. Lily learned that Asher could not read well, his education having been cut short by the war, and she began teaching him in the evenings after her students had gone home. He was a dedicated student, his large fingers carefully forming letters on the slate, his face lit with pride when he managed to read a whole sentence without help. "You are a good teacher," he told her one evening in mid-December as they sat close together by the stove. "You are a good student. Patient and willing to try. Learned patience from the mountains. They teach you to wait for the right moment, whether it is for a shot at game or for the weather to clear." Asher set down his slate and looked at her. "Or for a woman to learn to trust you." Lily felt her heart swell. I do trust you, Asher, more than I ever thought I could trust anyone again. I am glad. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch feather light. Because I love you, Lily Dawson, have loved you since the day you stepped off that stage. And I will keep loving you whether you ever feel the same or not. Lily felt tears prick her eyes. I love you too, she whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. I fought it for so long, told myself I could not afford to feel this way, but I do. I love you, Asher Quinn. The kiss they shared was deeper than the first, filled with promise and passion and the kind of tenderness that made Lily's soul sing. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were shaking. Marry me, Asher said, the words rough with emotion. I know it is fast. I know you might need more time, but I have to ask. Marry me, Lily. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you what real love looks like. Lily looked at this man, this patient, gentle mountain man who had waited for her to be ready, who had never pushed or demanded or tried to control her. She thought about the life they could build together, about waking up every morning to those blue eyes and that tender smile. Yes, she said, her voice clear and strong. Yes, I will marry you. They were wed on Christmas Eve in the small church in Hawthorne, with half the town in attendance. Lily wore a simple blue dress that Martha had helped her make, and Asher wore his cleanest buckskins and a shirt Lily had sewn for him. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Asher kissed her with such joy and reverence that several of the women in the congregation wept. The town had prepared a small celebration at the hotel, with food and music and dancing. Lily danced with her husband, marveling at how such a large man could move with such grace, and felt happiness bubble up inside her like champagne. What are you thinking? Asher asked as they swayed to the fiddle music. That I am happy, truly, genuinely happy. I did not think I would ever feel this way again. Get used to it, Asher said with a grin. I plan to keep you happy for the next 50 years at least. That night, they returned to the schoolhouse together as man and wife. Asher carried her over the threshold and Lily laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. He set her down gently and cupped her face in his large hands. We can take this as slow as you need, he said softly. I will never rush you or push you into anything you are not ready for. Lily felt her heart overflow with love for this man who put her comfort above his own desires. I am ready, she said. I trust you, Asher, completely. What they shared that night was nothing like what Lily had experienced before. Asher was patient and gentle, attentive to her needs and her responses, making sure she felt cherished and safe every moment. When she cried afterward, he held her close and let her weep out all the old hurts and fears, replacing them with tenderness and love. I have you, he murmured into her hair. You are safe now, always safe. And for the first time in her life, Lily believed it. They spent the winter months learning to be married, and it was both harder and easier than Lily had expected. Harder because there were moments when her old fears would surface, when Asher's large presence would trigger memories of Frank's violence, and she would have to breathe through the panic. Easier because Asher never took those moments personally, never made her feel guilty for her trauma. He simply waited, patient as always, until she could come back to herself and remember that he was nothing like the man who had hurt her. Lily continued teaching through the winter, and Asher made his trap lines closer to town so he could be home most nights. They transformed the storage room into a proper living space, and Asher built a larger bed to accommodate his frame. On the weekends, he would take Lily up into the foothills, teaching her to read the land the way he did, to see the stories written in tracks and broken branches. Come spring, I want to take you to my cabin, Asher said one February morning as they sat together watching the sunrise. Show you the high country. Will I like it there? Lily asked, snuggling deeper into his warm embrace. I think you will love it. It is peaceful, beautiful, good place to raise a family. Lily felt a flutter in her stomach at the mention of family. They had talked about children, about the life they wanted to build together. How many children do you want? As many as you are willing to give me. 1, 10 does not matter as long as they are ours. 10 might be excessive, Lily said with a laugh. How about we start with 1 and see how it goes? Sounds perfect. They tried for a baby that spring, and by June, Lily knew she was carrying their child. When she told Asher, he picked her up and spun her around, his face alight with pure joy. We are going to be parents, he said wonderingly. You and me, Lily. We are going to make a family. A real family, Lily agreed, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Built on love and trust and patience. True to his promise, Asher took her to his cabin in the mountains when summer came. It was a 2-day ride, and Lily was enchanted by the journey, by the way the landscape changed from desert scrub to pine forest, from rocky slopes to alpine meadows bright with wildflowers. The cabin itself was small but beautifully built, nestled in a valley with a clear stream running nearby and views of snow-capped peaks in every direction. Asher had clearly put his heart into building it, and every detail showed his craftsmanship. It is beautiful, Lily breathed, standing on the porch and looking out at the pristine wilderness. I can see why you love it here. It has been my refuge for a long time, but it was lonely. Asher came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, his hands resting gently on the small swell of her belly. Now it feels like home. They spent 2 weeks at the cabin, and Lily fell in love with the mountains just as Asher had predicted. She loved the silence broken only by birds' song and wind in the pines, loved the way the stars blazed in the clear night sky, loved the sense of being removed from the rest of the world in this perfect pocket of peace. But she also missed her students, missed the sense of purpose that teaching gave her. When they returned to Hawthorne in August, she was happy to be back, ready to start the new school year. Their son was born on a cold January morning in 1880, with Martha Griffith serving as midwife and Asher pacing the floor outside, his usual calm shattered by worry. When Martha finally emerged and told him he had a healthy baby boy, Asher burst into the room and fell to his knees beside the bed, tears streaming down his weathered face. He is perfect, he whispered, looking at the tiny bundle in Lily's arms. You are perfect, both of you. They named him Adam, after Asher's lost brother, and he was indeed perfect. He had his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair, and from the beginning he was a calm, happy baby. Watching Asher with their son made Lily fall in love with him all over again. He was so gentle with Adam, so patient and attentive. He sang to him in a surprisingly good baritone, told him stories about the mountains, held him for hours while Lily rested and recovered from the birth. You are a wonderful father, Lily told him one evening as they sat together, Adam sleeping peacefully in Asher's massive arms. I had a good example, Asher said. My father was patient and kind. I always wanted to be like him. Well, you succeeded. Adam is lucky to have you. We are both lucky to have you. As Adam grew, the little family found their rhythm. Lily taught during the day while Asher cared for their son, and in the evenings they would all be together, playing and reading and simply enjoying each other's company. The schoolhouse rang with laughter now, and the town women often remarked on how happy Lily looked, how different from the wary, frightened woman who had arrived 3 years ago. When Adam was 2, Lily discovered she was pregnant again. This time it was a girl, born in the spring of 1882, and they named her Grace. She was as different from her brother as could be, loud and demanding where Adam had been peaceful, but Asher loved her just as fiercely. "Our family is growing," Lily said one evening as they sat on the porch of their new house. Asher had built it himself, a larger place with room for their growing family. Adam was playing in the yard while Grace nursed, and the setting sun painted everything gold. "Is this what you imagined when you came to Hawthorne?" Asher asked. "No. I never imagined I could have anything like this. I came here to hide, to disappear. Instead, I found a life worth living." Lily looked at her husband, at the man who had waited patiently for her to heal, to trust, to love. "I found you, and I found everything I never knew I needed." Asher leaned over and kissed her softly. "Thank you for giving me a chance, Lily, for being brave enough to trust again. Thank you for waiting, for being patient when I needed time, for loving me even when I could not love you back. I would wait a lifetime for you, though I am mighty glad I did not have to." They sat together as the sun set, their children playing nearby, and Lily felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. She thought about the frightened woman she had been, running from a man who wanted to own her, convinced she would never be able to trust again. And she thought about the man who had changed everything, the mountain man with gentle eyes and endless patience who had shown her what real love looked like. The years rolled by in a pattern of seasons and growth. Adam started school when he turned 6, sitting in his mother's classroom and learning his letters with the same patience his father had shown. Grace followed 2 years later, loud and bright and completely fearless. Lily continued teaching, though she cut back her hours as the children grew. Asher still made his trap lines in the winter, but he no longer stayed up in the mountains for weeks at a time. His family was in town now, and he preferred to be with them. When Adam was 8 and Grace was 6, they had another child, another boy they named Matthew. He was born during a summer thunderstorm, and Asher joked that he came into the world the same way he seemed determined to live, with energy and chaos. Their house was loud and busy and full of love. Lily sometimes paused in her daily tasks and looked around at the life she had built, hardly able to believe it was real. 3 beautiful children, a husband who loved her unconditionally, a home that felt safe and warm. It was everything she had never dared to hope for. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Asher took Lily back to his cabin in the mountains. The children stayed with Martha, who spoiled them thoroughly, and for 5 days it was just the 2 of them in the wilderness. "You remember the first time I brought you here?" Asher asked as they sat on the porch watching the stars. "Of course. I was pregnant with Adam, terrified and excited all at once. You have given me the best 10 years of my life, Lily Quinn." Asher took her hand, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm. "I wake up every morning still amazed that you chose me. You made it easy to choose you. You never demanded or pushed. You just waited, patient as the mountains, until I was ready." Lily turned to face him fully. "I love you more now than I did the day we married. I did not think that was possible, but it is. Every day with you is a gift." They made love that night under the stars, and it was just as tender and passionate as it had been on their wedding night. Afterward, wrapped in blankets and each other's arms, Lily felt tears slide down her cheeks. "What is it?" Asher asked, concern in his voice. "Did I hurt you?" "No, never. I am just happy, so impossibly happy." She kissed him softly. "Thank you for waiting for me, Asher. Thank you for showing me that love does not have to hurt, that trust is possible, that I deserve to be cherished." "You do deserve it. You deserve everything good in this world." Asher held her close. "And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know that." They returned to town and their children, and life continued its beautiful rhythm. Adam grew tall and strong like his father, with the same patient temperament and love of the wilderness. Grace was bright and fearless, determined to be a teacher like her mother. Matthew was the wild one, always into mischief, always making them laugh. When Lily turned 35, she discovered she was pregnant one more time. It was unexpected, and at first she was worried about having a baby at her age, but Asher calmed her fears with his steady presence. Their daughter Rose was born in the winter of 1890, and she was the perfect addition to their family. Quiet and observant, she seemed to take in everything around her with wide, knowing eyes. "4 children," Lily said one evening as she nursed Rose while the older 3 did their homework at the table. "We really did make a family." "The best family," Asher agreed, helping Matthew with his arithmetic. "Though I will admit, I am not sure I can handle any more." "4 seems like a good number," Lily laughed. "I agree. 4 is perfect." As the children grew, Lily and Asher grew with them. They weathered illnesses and injuries, celebrations and sorrows, always together, always supporting each other. Adam grew into a fine young man who chose to become a teacher like his mother, eventually taking over the school when Lily decided to retire. Grace married a good man, a rancher from the next county, and gave them grandchildren to spoil. Matthew became a lawman, using his energy and fearlessness to protect others. Rose, the baby, became a writer, documenting the stories of the Old West before they were lost to time. Through it all, Asher and Lily remained devoted to each other. They still took trips to the mountain cabin when they could, still sat together on their porch watching the sunset, still held hands like newlyweds on their 30th wedding anniversary. Surrounded by their children and grandchildren, Lily stood and raised a glass. 30 years ago, I married a man who taught me what real love looks like. A man who waited patiently for me to heal, to trust, to open my heart again." She looked at Asher, her eyes shining with tears. "You saved me, Asher Quinn, not just from Frank, but from a life of fear and loneliness. You showed me that I was worthy of love, that trust was possible, that waiting for the right person was always worth it." Asher rose and pulled her into his arms, kissing her to the applause and laughter of their family. When they pulled apart, he spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Lily Dawson came to Hawthorne running from her past, convinced she would never trust anyone again. But she was brave enough to give me a chance, patient enough to let me prove that my love was real. These 30 years have been the greatest blessing of my life, and I would wait another 30 just for one more day with her. Their children wiped tears from their eyes, and their grandchildren giggled at the romance of it all. As the celebration continued around them, Lily and Asher slipped outside to their porch, wanting a moment alone. "Can you believe it has been 30 years?" Lily asked, settling into the chair beside her husband, their fingers automatically lacing together. "Feels like yesterday and forever all at once." Asher brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Do you ever regret it, choosing this life with me? Not for a single second. You gave me everything I never knew I needed. A home, a family, safety, love." Lily squeezed his hand. "You waited for me when no one else would have. You gave me time to heal. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You were worth the wait. You are still worth everything." They sat together as the stars came out, listening to the laughter of their family inside, and Lily reflected on the long journey that had brought her to this moment. From the frightened woman on the stagecoach to the content grandmother surrounded by love, it had been a transformation she could never have imagined, and it had all started with a mountain man who was willing to wait. As they grew older, Lily and Asher slowed down but never stopped loving each other with the same intensity they had from the beginning. Asher's hair turned silver, and his body bore the marks of decades of hard living in the wilderness. But to Lily, he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. Lily's dark hair grayed at the temples, and lines appeared around her eyes and mouth. But Asher still looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. They celebrated 40 years of marriage surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. Adam had taken over the school permanently and had 3 children of his own. Grace had 5 children with her rancher husband and seemed determined to populate the entire county. Matthew had married late, but was blissfully happy with his wife and their twin daughters. Rose had never married, preferring her independence and her writing, but she visited often and brought them stories from her travels. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the whole town of Hawthorne turned out to celebrate. The mayor gave a speech about how Asher and Lily Quinn represented the best of what marriage could be, how their love had been an example to everyone who knew them. Lily, now 73, stood with her husband's arm around her waist and looked out at the crowd of people who had become their extended family over the decades. When I came to this town 52 years ago, I was running from everything. From pain, from fear, from a man who wanted to own me. Her voice was still strong despite her age. I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone, never trusting anyone again. But then I met a mountain man with patient eyes and gentle hands, and he changed everything. Asher, now 76, pulled her closer. His body was not as strong as it once was, but his love had never wavered. Lily Dawson stepped off that stage and into my heart, and she has lived there ever since. 50 years of marriage, and I still wake up every morning grateful that she chose me. The crowd erupted in applause, and their children came forward to embrace them. It was a perfect day, filled with love and laughter and the kind of joy that only comes from a life well lived. That night, alone in their bedroom, Lily and Asher lay side by side in the bed he had built decades ago. "Do you think we will get 50 more?" Lily asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "I would not complain if we did," Asher said with a chuckle. "But if we do not, I am content. We have lived a good life, Lily. We raised 4 wonderful children, saw them grow and have families of their own. We built something real and lasting. We did. And it all started because you were willing to wait for me. Best decision I ever made." They fell asleep in each other's arms, just as they had done for 50 years, and when the morning came, they woke together and faced another day side by side. The years continued to pass, gentler now but no less precious. Asher's body finally forced him to give up his trips to the mountains, arthritis making the long rides too painful. But he did not seem to mind. He spent his days on their porch, watching the town go about its business, playing with great-grandchildren, and sitting with Lily. Lily's mind stayed sharp even as her body weakened. She could no longer teach, but she helped Adam with the school, and she wrote down the stories of their life for Rose to include in her books. On a warm spring evening in 1935, when Lily was 86 and Asher was 89, they sat together on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. Asher had been feeling poorly all day, and Lily had insisted he rest, but he wanted to see the sunset one more time. "It is a beautiful one," he said, his voice weak but content. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and gold, the mountains standing dark against the brilliant colors. "It is," Lily agreed, holding his hand tightly. "Just like the first one we watched together. I love you, Lily Quinn. I have loved you from the moment I saw you, and I will love you beyond this life and into whatever comes next. I love you too, Asher. Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for showing me what love should be." Asher smiled, and as the last rays of the sun disappeared behind the mountains, he closed his eyes and let out a peaceful breath. Lily felt his hand go slack in hers, and she knew he was gone. She sat there holding him as the stars came out, tears streaming down her face, but they were not tears of regret. They were tears of gratitude for 57 years of the most beautiful love she could have imagined. Asher Quinn was buried on the mountain he loved in a clearing near his old cabin with a view of the valley spread out below. The entire town came to his funeral, and people spoke of his kindness, his patience, his gentle nature. But it was Lily's words that everyone remembered. "My husband taught me that real love is patient. It does not demand or control or rush. It waits. It gives you time to heal, time to trust, time to grow. He waited for me when I needed it most, and because of that patience, we built a life more beautiful than anything I could have dreamed." She stood at his grave, surrounded by their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. "He was my mountain, steady and strong and eternal, and I will carry him in my heart until we meet again." Lily lived for 3 more years after Asher's death, surrounded by family, content in the knowledge that she had been truly loved. When she passed peacefully in her sleep on a cold December night, her family buried her beside Asher on the mountain, just as she had requested. Their great-granddaughter carved their headstone, and on it she wrote the story that had been passed down through generations. Asher Quinn and Lily Dawson Quinn. He waited for her to trust. She learned to love. Together they built a life of patience, devotion, and enduring love. 1846, 1935, and 1849, 1938. Forever together. The cabin on the mountain still stands, maintained by their descendants as a reminder of where their family story truly began. The schoolhouse in Hawthorne, now a museum, has a plaque honoring Lily Dawson Quinn, the teacher who came west running from her past and found her future instead. But the real legacy of Asher and Lily Quinn lives on in their descendants, who carry forward the lessons their ancestors taught them. That love is patient. That trust must be earned, not demanded. That waiting for the right person is always worth it. That real love does not control or possess, but gives freely and without conditions. And that sometimes, the most beautiful love stories begin with someone willing to wait as long as it takes.